Thank you so much for coming and for being here at the conference. I'm really excited to be here all together, and just thank you for being an animal advocate. I know that's why we're all here. So whichever way you do this, whether you sign petitions at home, whether you're out protesting in the street, or you support your friends to go vegan, it all matters. And I'm here with Matthew, and today we're going to be talking about chickens. We'll be discussing the work that we do to advocate for chickens and why we believe they may be one of the world's most abused animals. We'll talk about our theory of change, why we do what we do, and how we approach it, and we'd love to hear your questions at the end. So who are we? We're the Humane League. We're an animal protection charity whose mission is to end the abuse of animals raised for food. We've been working in the US since 2005, and we came to the UK in 2016. We have a relentless commitment to our mission and to achieving change for animals. We collaborate with organisations all around the world, and we founded the Open Wing Alliance to help these organisations around the globe fight for chickens. We share resources with these organisations, we strategise and we collaborate on campaigns. We are laser focused on effectiveness and creating the biggest impact for the biggest number of animals possible. And thanks to this focus on effectiveness, we're lucky to have been rated top charity by Animal Charity Evaluators, which is an independent organisation which reviews impact for every year running. And first, to give you a little bit about me. I'm Hannah, and I'm head of comms at the Humane League UK. I've been working at the Humane League for nearly 7 years. I was raised as a vegetarian, and back then when I lived in the UK as a child, this wasn't too out of the ordinary, but at the age of 7, my family moved to a very rural part of France, and I was soon to discover that actually this was very out of the ordinary, and it's a very sort of traditional agricultural place that I grew up in, and my friends' concerned parents used to tell my mum that I would never grow without meat, despite the fact that I was already towering over my friends, and my classmates were just determined to get me to eat meat, and they would constantly ask me to try it. But this only made me more steadfast in my conviction. And I did begin to stick up for myself more. I used to write to supermarkets asking for more vegetarian options. I used to speak to my friends about the cruelty of foie gras. And I used to protest the mobile zoo coming to town by shouting at them. And in 2015, I joined Compassion and Well Farming, which is one of the largest and oldest farm animal welfare charities. I worked there in the supporter engagement team and the media team. And very soon after joining and learning all about the egg and dairy industries, I went vegan. And this was 9 years ago now, a time where if a new vegan product was released in a supermarket, I would hurry there to go and try it. And that's actually become way too common to keep up now. Matt, what about you?
Hello, I'm Matthew. I'm the PR coordinator at the Humane League UK. I've been working with the Humane League since September 2021. And I try to get our campaigns in the media, and from time to time I get to speak to lovely people like you. I went vegetarian in 2015, just a bit of backstory. After I got enlisted to help tag the ears of pigs at like a neighbouring, at my neighbour's house, basically in the countryside. And the pigs really, they squealed and kicked and really didn't want their sensitive ears to be riveted with metal. So I was a bit disturbed, and I didn't want to be part of that anymore. Luckily, I had the example of my mum and my brother who were vegetarian already. So I went to university, studied history, studied Egyptology. And after all of that, I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know. During COVID, sort of like began to analyse my beliefs and figured if I was really serious about animal suffering, then I had to ditch the dairy and eggs. As a passionate new vegan, first I thought I wanted to be a journalist, did freelance writing on the topic for a few years, or 1 year, I think, but decided ultimately I would have more of an impact working for an animal charity full time. I still love history though, and I want to give you a fun fact. Did you know that chickens used to be sacred in Britain? True story, yeah. And forbidden from being killed. Julius Caesar writes about this in his Commentary on the Gallic Wars. Great read. Pick it up in all good libraries near you. This has actually been verified by archaeology, and I'm hoping that relevant to this talk, we can revive the great British tradition of loving chickens. Woo! Woo! Let's do it.
So why are we here? This here is why we fight for chickens every day. Fingers crossed this works. Got a choreographed dance to go with it.
Oh, no sound?
Just imagine the sound.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I fight for chickens every day, and that's why I bang on about chickens every single day. They are amazing animals. They deserve our respect, our love, our care, our compassion, and our attention, because they're sentient beings like you and I.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's it again? Sorry, how do we move on? Here we go. So, we farm a shocking amount of chickens in the UK. Does anyone know how many chickens we farm per year? Any ballparks? Anyone want to hazard a guess? 120 million? 1.2 billion. Yeah, every year we raise and kill over 1 billion chickens for their meat. That's more than all of the other farmed species combined. That's enough birds that if you put them in a line from beak to tail, that line would stretch around the entire planet 12.5 times. It's completely mind-boggling. 9 out of 10 land animals killed for food are chickens. And chickens far outnumber people in the UK. And it's for this reason, due to both the scale and the intensity of chicken farming, that we focus on chickens as our top priority. This is our principal campaign, Chickens Raised for Meat, but we also campaign to ban cages for laying hens and to secure stronger protections for farmed fish. So, why chickens? I mean, our use and abuse of chickens is so prolific that their bones have become the top archaeological fingerprint of humankind. Scientists have declared that human beings, the impact of human beings on the planet is so profound that we're living in this new geological age, the Anthropocene, one defined by plastic pollution, nuclear radiation, and the oceans of fossilized chicken bones in our landfills and under our streets. And this industrialized abuse of chickens is extremely modern. In 1950, the UK slaughtered around 1 million chickens per year, which is still shockingly high. But in 1965, it became 150 million, and of course today, over 1.2 billion. It is our hope that what can be done can be undone, and that while many have lived to see chickens become exploited on an unthinkingly massive scale, we will live to see their slaughter decrease and their conditions improve.
So the scale is huge, but what about their lives, their experience? And this here is the red jungle fowl, and it's their historic natural form, and it's what these domesticated farmed chickens have been bred from. This red jungle fowl is typically found across Southeast Asia. They are naturally very highly motivated to carry out innate natural behaviours such as scratching the ground, foraging, and dust bathing. Dust bathing enables them to keep the right levels of oil in their plumage, and these behaviours are very, very important to them. Although the jungle fowl was domesticated around 8,000 years ago, it's only in the last few decades that human-controlled breeding has created what's called the broiler chicken, which is a chicken raised for their meat, that's raised on factory farms around the world today. And what they go through today is some of the most extreme forms of industrialized, merciless cruelty that any animal could endure. They grow so big, so fast, thanks to decades of selective breeding, where the industry has chosen to breed the biggest and fastest growing chickens together over and over again, which has resulted in, quite simply, a genetic monster. They have a growth rate which is 400 times faster than in the 1950s. The reason they do this, as you can imagine, is because the industry wants to get big breast muscle to put on the shelves as fast as possible. And at 35 days old, they're considered ready for slaughter. So 35 days, that's, for all intents and purposes, they're just babies on the inside. And that's why we say they are bred to suffer. They are Franken chickens, and they have suffering coded into their very DNA. And it's come at a huge cost to their welfare. I'm not going to show you some of the very worst images of chickens on factory farms. We've all seen them. It's horrific. It's the sort of thing you can't unsee. And we come across it a lot. Oh, I know you probably see a lot of it as well. And it still brings tears to my eyes when I see it all the time. And this here isn't one of the worst images, and it's still absolutely brutal. So that is saying something. Chickens who are bred in this way, they often can't even stand up because they're so top heavy, as you can see here. And that means that they may spend hours lying in their own waste. This causes painful blisters on their skin from the ammonia. They're driven by intense hunger due to the speed of their growth. So they'll get up to eat and they may take a few steps. And then because their legs are so sore and painful, they have to sit down again. And their growth rate will often cause them to die prematurely from heart attacks. In fact, over 80 million chickens die on the farm before they even reach the slaughterhouse every year. And that, again, is more than all of the pigs, sheep, cows, and egg-laying hens that are slaughtered every year combined. It's absolutely senseless waste of life. And it's all the more sad when you think about what a chicken is capable of, the bonds they can form, the fun they can have, the joy they can experience, and their personalities. Here, they are stripped of everything that makes them a chicken and treated as a mere commodity, designed to make as much profit as possible with no regard for their welfare or individuality.
While all of this is completely unjustifiable, of course, it isn't even providing people with good quality food. A few years ago, the Humane League UK carried out a study looking at the issue of white striping on supermarket chickens. Basically, white striping is a muscle disease where white stripes form on a chicken's breast muscles. This happens because chickens, they have so much flesh, they grow so fast that their bodies have trouble circulating blood through all of this muscle tissue. Their muscles become inflamed and die from a lack of oxygen, and their bodies replace this muscle tissue with sort of fibrous or fatty tissues, which appear as like these white streaks on the flesh. This reduces the nutritional value of the meat by increasing the fat content, which I only bring up because many people who eat meat choose chicken specifically because it's considered like a lean meat. We found 8 out of 10 breast fillets on shelves in supermarkets were affected by white striping. In fact, some supermarkets had white striping in over 90% of the packets we sampled. Comparison, just 11% of the higher welfare packets had this disease. But yeah, I mean, next time you go to the shops, if you can stomach it, just pick up a packet of chicken breast on the shelf, and I'm willing to bet that you will probably see these stripes running through them. And this isn't the only physical marker left by the super fast growth of Franken chickens. There's also wooden breast syndrome, where the flesh becomes all wooden and dry. Green muscle disease, where you might have seen images, people sometimes cut into a chicken carcass and only to find sort of green decaying flesh underneath. I mean, it's completely revolting stuff, but the big media interest we got, as you can see here in this survey, shows that the public are interested in these stomach-turning diseases, and you can use these symptoms of the cruel way chickens have been selectively bred, as a springboard for conversations about animal sentience and animal suffering. So what can we do about this? How can we get society to move away from these types of cruelty? Well, it's a question that many animal charities and advocates have been asking themselves for years. And in 2017, a group of experts, including the Humane League, got together to design a solution. This is the Better Chicken Commitment. The aim of the commitment is to raise the baseline standards in the industry, to target the cruelest of the cruel practices that typify this industry and make them slightly better, marginally better. The changes are highly targeted at the major sources of suffering on chicken farms, but also meet the industry where it is to some extent so that these changes can actually be implemented, that companies will sign on. So key areas of the policy include using healthier, slower growing breeds who suffer less from those rampant health problems that affect Franken chickens, giving the animals more space, natural light and environmental enrichments, using less painful slaughter methods, third-party auditing and complying with animal welfare laws. Again, with the Better Chicken Commitment, we are clear this should be the new minimum standard. We're not saying it's perfect. We're not saying it's ideal or even the end goal. We're saying what's happening right now is so bad, it's so appallingly cruel that we need to change it, especially as there is opportunity to change it. We need to raise the lowest of the low to something better. While people still eat meat, we need to do what we can to reduce the suffering of those animals who are still trapped on farms. Even if society does eventually transform into a vegan one, are we prepared to let animals suffer more than they have to while we work to get there? And the Better Chicken Commitment does reduce suffering. A report by the Welfare Footprints Project, which is a think tank aimed at informing efforts to prevent and alleviate animal suffering, looked at the impact of the Better Chicken Commitment on broiler chickens, and using its cumulative pain framework, which basically tries to quantify pain in terms of intensity and duration, it found that compared to current standard factory farming practices and breeding, the Better Chicken Commitment results in 78% reduction in excruciating pain, a 66% reduction in disabling pain, and a 24% reduction in hurtful pain. So slower growing breeds as demanded by the BCC. They're stronger, they're more active, they can stand up and walk. They're more resistant to heat stress, which is important because in 2022 we saw 2 million chickens die in the heat wave in the UK, and heat waves may become even more of a pressing issue with our changing climate. And yeah, when it comes to demanding change over the last 6 years, we've been, campaigning against companies. We've carried out hundreds of protests, stunts, and actions. We've targeted companies with petitions, including one in partnership with Chris Packham, and that petition's now reached a staggering 378,000 signatures. We've put ads in national papers. We've given companies a deluge of comments on social media. Our supporters have sent company leadership countless emails. We've got our campaigns trending on Twitter. We've secured hundreds of media mentions and repeated coverage for animals in national newspapers. We've received support from amazing stars like Peter Egan, Lucy Watson, Benjamin Zephaniah, and Deborah Meaden. And to put it simply, we're so incredibly lucky to have secured such widespread and resounding support for changing the lives of chickens for the better. And yeah, some more stats. Since we started campaigning, over 380 companies in the UK and EU have committed to the Better Chicken Commitment, with over 130 of these in the UK. 70% of the top 10 restaurant companies have committed, including Greggs, Nando's, KFC, Subway, and Starbucks. 80% of the top 10 food manufacturers are committed, including Danone, Kraft Heinz, Nestle, and Unilever. Waitrose committed in 2019. M&S has completely fulfilled its commitment to the BCC with all fresh chicken lines ahead of schedule. And Morrison's, Sainsbury's, Co-op, and Lidl are at least giving chickens more space. These commitments will change the lives of hundreds of millions of animals each year. It's not liberation, I know that, but we must not make the perfect the enemy of the good. Hundreds of millions of animals tangibly suffering less than before is an outcome that I am deeply proud of.
So, hands up if you think we have good laws to protect animals in this country. Was wondering if anyone was going to raise their hand. Well, if you had raised your hand, you would have had a point, because we do have stronger laws than many other places in the world. But while we have those better laws, we do have a long way to go still. And one of the big problems we have is that the laws we do have aren't always enforced or used in the way that they're actually intended. So when our former trustee, Edie Bowles from Advocates for Animals, she's right here, and don't miss her legal on the legal panel. When she came to us and told us that actually fast-growing chickens should already be considered illegal under current welfare laws, our jaws just dropped. And that's because of this one very important law, which is the Welfare of Animals Regulations 2007. And it says that animals may only be kept for farming purposes if it can be reasonably expected on the basis of their genotype or phenotype. that they can be kept without detrimental effect on their health or welfare. So let's just take in what this law says. It's saying that animals can't be farmed if their genes cause any detrimental effect on their health and welfare. So if this law, which should be protecting animals from suffering, doesn't apply to chickens raised for meat who have suffering coded into their DNA, who are literally bred to suffer, then what is it for? And that's why we're taking the government to court. Since 2021, we've been battling DEFRA, which is the government's farming body, in a legal fight. It's been a long and arduous road, but we're now in a position that only a minuscule percentage of legal challenges get to, just 5%. First, back in 2021, we had a hearing to seek permission to take the case to be heard in court. The permission was denied, and we appealed, and we were granted permission to take it forwards. We had our first court case hearing in May 2023, and we were lucky enough to have support on the day from Benjamin Zephaniah, who's now sadly no longer with us, Lucy Watson, and Chris Packham. We presented a solid argument. The law says animals shouldn't be bred to suffer, and chickens are literally bred to suffer. We had reams of scientific evidence to support this, and were even supported by expert testimony from the RSPCA, who've done studies to show that these fast-growing breeds are the principal source of suffering for these chickens, regardless of the environment they're raised in. Sadly, our case was then thrown out by the judge, but we appealed again, and the judge reviewing the case agreed it deserves to be heard. And we're now taking our case to the Court of Appeal later this year. It's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because if we win, it could force the government to phase out the use of these fast-growing breeds of chicken. And even if we don't win, taking on this case has enabled us to tell millions about the plight of chickens raised for meat. The case was covered on BBC News, Good Morning Britain, ITV News, Radio 2, in the Mirror, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, even the Daily Star. The list goes on, very much thanks to Matthew here. So if only a fraction of those who heard about this case had a seed planted about what it is they're eating, about why chickens deserve better than this, then it has been worth doing just for that. So strengthening laws and securing these better protections for animals in society, this is all part of our theory of change. And what we see is the incremental journey towards a world free from animal suffering. And where we are right now is that the majority of animals are factory farmed. We eat a huge volume of animals and animal products, but we also do have a growing number of people uniting against cruelty to animals and eating less animal products. There has been research to show that meat consumption is actually expected to decline in the EU. And we are building better corporate and legal protections for animals. And if we continue that, the next step in our theory is that these laws and corporate protections for animals will continue to get better. Corporations will be actually forced to consider the protection of animals in their supply chains, can no longer get away with callous abuse and profiteering. And from there, we'll have fewer animals on farms that will continue decreasing, and those who are will have better welfare and have their needs properly considered. Factory farming will start to become a horrible mark on our history, which we're turning our backs on. And bit by bit, animal consumption will become a stranger concept, as all animals will have higher status in society and higher protections, not just companion animals. Like human animals and their rights, we will have these strong legal and corporate protections. And this will lead us to a world where animals are no longer raised and abused for food, a world which is free from animal suffering. And this is a theory. It's something we'll be measuring and assessing that it's working as we go. But we can also look to history for supporting proof that change does come in steps. Social movements have always been a series of incremental steps towards the ultimate goal. And I do find myself getting frustrated sometimes at the pace of change. I do want it to happen faster because it feels so urgent, and I want society to take that one big step from the current way of doing things to a world free from animal abuse. We still see animals suffering every day. We get comments on social media all the time saying, but bacon though, and people who just make a hobby out of denigrating those who choose to stick up for animals. So how can we be sure that change is happening? But Then I get very privileged moments like one that I had a few weeks ago. I was lucky to go and meet Claire Druce. She is the founder of an activist group called Chickens Lib in the 1970s, and this here is one of their posters. At the time they made this poster, 96% of hens raised for eggs were in barren battery cages. These were tiny wire cages stacked in rows with a complete lack of enrichment. Hens were prevented from carrying out these essential natural behaviours, which led to immense stress and frustration. And Chickens Lib spent decades campaigning against these barren battery cages and advocating for more compassion for chickens. Fast forward to now, and barren battery cages are banned. Their ugly sibling, the colony cage, which gave chickens more space and enrichment, now makes up for just under a quarter of production in the UK. If this campaigning against barren battery cages by Chickens Lib and other organisations hadn't happened over the course of decades, we would still have these barren battery cages, and the scale of suffering that hens would be enduring would probably be far greater than what they endure today. So yes, it is still bad, and there's no denying that, but we have seen progress. Hens are suffering less thanks to these campaigns, and let's remember that change isn't always linear. We have to make sometimes one step forwards and take 2 steps back. But this here, I think, is one big step forward. This news came out just last week. Scotland has launched a consultation on banning these enriched cages, and it's the first part of the UK to launch a consultation on this welfare issue. It's something that campaigners have been asking for years, and it could see cages finally being outlawed for good, with Scotland setting the bar for the rest of the UK and hopefully the rest of the world to follow. And the way I see it, whether we're advocating for veganism, for eating less animal products, for getting rid of the worst forms of factory farming, we are all on this same journey. This is what I'm trying to illustrate with my very bad illustration here. I did try to use AI to make it at first, and it came up with some very weird stuff. So I think I should probably speak to speciesism.w2f for help on this. But we're all on the same journey using these different roads. And because we're on these different roads, we're actually able to reach and pick up different people along the way. And we at the Humane League, we're just one small part of this road. And I personally don't really see as much dichotomy between animal rights and animal welfare. I see animal welfare as a strategy towards animal rights and a step that we have to take on that journey. And I do understand that there are people who may not agree, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's, in my view, a good thing that we have a diversity of approaches in the movement. It enables us to reach more people. The values of this conference actually sum it up better than I can. The value statement says, no one person or method alone can make change happen. We need many perspectives and strategies to win. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. We are stronger if we push for animals to be considered and prioritised in many different ways and at many different levels in society. We need this diversity of voices across the spectrum, from the radical edge to the milquetoast moderates, in order to push forward the window of what is considered acceptable in society, which will hopefully in time begin to permeate through our government and our institutions.
And I think many audiences may not be likely to engage positively with certain types of messaging around animal liberation or animal freedom. And I can say that because I was one of those. When I was vegetarian, I was probably, I can say it because it's about myself, one of those closed-minded people who believe they're doing enough and won't hear anything against it. And I was highly motivated by Compassion World Farming's work to improve the lives of animals without what I perceived as being having too much of a focus on diet change. And that brought me in, and it enabled me to open my mind and learn more. And now I've been vegan for 9 years. I consider myself to be an abolitionist, and I want to see a vegan world. And this is why I'm working for this organisation, because I know the work that we're doing is getting us closer to that.
So, do you want to get involved? If this sounds like something you'd like to be involved in, please join us. We'll be carrying out a demonstration outside the Royal Courts of Justice in London in October for this legal challenge we discussed, which is happening on either the 22nd or 23rd of October. Dates to be confirmed. So yeah, please use the QR code here to sign up for news and actions, and you'll be kept informed as to how to join. And that, yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I just wanted to add, just thank you everyone for coming, for being here, and thank you for all of the work that you all do and all the activism you do. And yeah, we'll take your questions, but thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you so much to Hannah Yates and Matthew Chalmers. We've got 10 minutes now for a Q&A. I guess I'll pass around the mic. I saw these hands first.
Hi, thank you.
Hello.
So your strategy presumably will make it prohibitive for farmers to continue in the ways that they're doing and reduce numbers of birds farmed here. Do you have a concurrent strategy for stopping those numbers just being replaced by imports from other countries with standards that we currently hold?
Well, I think I can address it insofar as when we campaign against companies to sign up to the Better Chicken commitment, it applies to their entire supply chain. So if they're sourcing from Brazil or from Poland or from Thailand, they still have to raise the animals to that standard in those countries. As for legal, well, we're focusing on the legal case right now in terms of we're not doing much lobbying in terms of the government right now for law changes or anything like that. But I suppose that would be something we would potentially consider later on. I don't know if you want to add anything, Hannah.
No, I think that covers it in terms of the Better Chicken commitment. It very much has to apply to the whole of the supply chain. So yeah.
If I can be cheeky, I've got two quick questions. The first one was at the start, you mentioned that you're rated either the top or one of the top charities by ACE. And I wanted to know, what is it about the Humane League that stands you apart from other organisations that would have been considered for that spot? And the other one is, obviously you focus in the UK, and I think you said the Humane League is in the US as well. Is there any prospect of the Humane League working in places like Asia or Africa, where I believe there's going to be the biggest increase in the future for meat consumption? Or do you know of any organisations that are doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for that last question, it's so important for us to help drive progress all around the world, because it's, all very well making change in the UK. If animals are still being abused all around the world, then, it's the same thing. So we work really closely with organisations in Asia, and through the Open Wing Alliance, we work to kind of find those organisations who are already set up and operating there, rather than sort of set ourselves up as a new charity somewhere where there's already activists there. We kind of help those existing activist groups to scale up what they're doing, and the Open Wing Alliance gives out grants every year to these organisations to help them, help strengthen them and give them the funds that they need. So that's really what the whole point of the Open Wing Alliance is, to strengthen the movement for chickens all around the world. And I think, to your first question, that is likely one of the things that I think animal charity evaluators finds to be impactful, is because we are sharing those resources, those strategies, and helping build the movement around the world. And I think it's also about the way that we kind of decide what to work on, and it's specifically given the scale in terms of numbers and the intensity of the suffering of chickens. And so if you're able to make just one small change in reduction of suffering for that many animals, the impact on it, when you kind of look at units of suffering, saying is huge. So I think that's something that really comes into the ACE award.
Is there a question over here somewhere?
Hi, thank you for everything you do. So my question is, in terms of enforcement, obviously we know things like the Red Tractor Scheme and the RSPCA is just not enforced. Obviously the RSPCA aren't going to go to their own farms and enforce these problems that we see all the time in these undercover investigations. So how do you propose that the Better Chicken commitment is going to be enforceable in any way?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And the Better Chicken Commitment does require third-party auditing. So it's part of the scheme. When they sign up, they have to say that they're going to demonstrate that they're actually making the shift towards what's being asked of, and that there's actually it's happening. So that is kind of included in the scheme, and it is an issue. Obviously, like we have these schemes, and like such as the RSPCA Assured, and the farmers don't always adhere to the methods they're meant to be. So that definitely needs to change as well, for it to actually have the effect intended.
Jump in on that as well. I think it's a great point you raised, by the way, but I think another interesting element of the BCC is because of the breed change. As long as we can prove that the farmers are supplying those types of chickens, the suffering will inherently be less, because they don't have these congenital health issues that the faster growing breeds do. So it's almost like, everything else equal, you have a Franken chicken and a slower growing breed, the slower growing breed will be suffering less. Now, again, it doesn't mean it's good or okay, but it's kind of like that systemic change that in any given environment, the slower growing breed will fare better. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Claudia, can I pass this to you?
Thank you so much for all the work that you do. I really hear what you're saying in terms of like not making the perfect the enemy of the good, I think you said. That was phrased really well. And how this approach is more appealing to so many people, obviously bettering conditions for the animals at the time, making it less profitable, and actually what you said on lifting the status of animals, I think is really important on like a conscientious and cultural level. I guess an opposing argument I hear and think about quite a lot is this worry that this kind of change continues to perpetuate in some way the idea, or could continue to perpetuate the idea, that there is an ethical way to farm animals and in some way make people feel better. And then in terms of like zooming out and looking at the timeline, whether there's a chance that extends, this sort of practice. And I just wonder what your response is to that.
Yeah, just on a personal note, like when I joined the Humane League, I was very much of that view, and it was quite difficult to I had to talk to people and be like, are we sure we're doing the right thing? And I came to think that we are, because, well, I mean, there's a few points to consider, really. First point is people have been like asking people, like campaigning for people to go vegan and vegetarian for a while, and yes, we would want more funding to go into that. Like we said in the presentation, we don't think one approach is right. We want the whole movement to try a variety of approaches. But given that, how long will it take for us to get to a vegan world? And if it's 50 years, 100 years, and we're not doing anything for the animals still on farms, I mean, those animals are suffering in worse ways than they have to. And so I think we need to prioritize the well-being of the animals when we think about that. What else? What else do I want to say? Sorry, the question was...
I guess specifically the idea...
perpetuate the...
continuing to ingrain this idea that there is an ethical way to do this, and on quite a deep societal level.
Sorry, I remember what I was going to say. I think it's just a matter of like careful messaging as well when we get in the press, when we communicate about this publicly. We never say the Better Chicken Commitment is good. The Better Chicken Commitment is like... makes everything all right or is ethical. We just say it's better, And I think that's an important distinction to make. I think as well, just the act of publicizing this and publicizing the conditions on factory farms, when that gets out to a lot of people, then, some people might say, okay, I'm going to buy higher welfare. For a lot of people, it does actually make them go further than that. And we do say, like, the best way to reduce suffering for animals on an individual level is to leave them off your plate. So that is something we incorporate in our messaging. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see more evidence of people only getting more and more activated towards becoming more... I want to say radical, but it's not. We know it's not radical to obviously want to not eat animals, and it shouldn't be radical. But in that sense of like, you might appeal to them by saying like, this animal deserves better, and like let's create a better environment for them, and then it will be the start of a journey towards something more. And I see that happening much more than people just staying settled at that level. So, but I do think it is something really, it is important to keep at front of mind to make sure that we're not doing that.
That's all right. Can I just add one more little thing I just thought of? Sorry. Also, like, looking at other social movements through history, like, I think you can see gradual steps. So, like, when women first got the vote in the country, it was like only women over 30 who owned property, for example, all these conditional things. And it would seem strange to me, at least, to say, for people at the time to say, we shouldn't take this step forward, we should only allow it for all women, because it's like these things happen in stages, you know, it's like a little bit of progress here, a little bit of progress there, and it advances, then eventually, you know, full suffrage, and you know, we might still be there, but imagine someone saying, you know, we don't want women to have the vote at all because there'll still be a patriarchy. I think we need to take the wins as they come, you know, yeah.
And bring society along.
And bring society along, yeah.
Force them along.
Cool. We have time for one last quick question, but do you guys have a stall today?
We don't.
You have a stall,
Just
but
us.
are you around this weekend?
Yeah.
So catch them around and ask more questions.
Thanks. Yeah, I was curious about the legal challenge. I guess it seems so obvious to me that they're breaking the law, at least by the way you described it. And so I'm curious what the argument is that they're not, or what the judge was thinking, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, God, when you try and read through the things they're saying, for me, it boggles my mind. It's they're using, I think, outdated science, and they're trying to basically say that they don't have a policy that DEFRA are saying they don't have a policy that permits the use of these fast-growing breeds, and I think it's all this sort of like technical application of law that they're trying to like squirm their way out of it, basically. But these things are very hard to argue, because it all comes down to these sort of minutiae of how things are written and how they should be interpreted, and it can be, I think, quite subjective from one person to another in terms of the judges or whoever it is that's reading this stuff. But yeah, DEFRA hasn't got a leg to stand on. You know, it seems so obvious, but they do try and fight it. But do you want to add anything from your perspective?
I'm trying to remember all the legal stuff. I see Edie right here, so. Do you want to explain?
Well, first of all, we have a legal talk tomorrow, so just a little pitch for that. So they're not arguing against that provision. It's largely just technicalities, to be honest. So the first technicality is that to go against the government in these challenges, you need a target. So currently, we don't have a statement where they say keeping these birds is lawful. So that's your first hurdle. There's really unfavourable case law on that point. So you need something to point to. So instead, what we've done is we've said that their interpretation of the law is wrong. And as a result of that, unlawful practices and policies are flowing from that, which is a really unique way in. It's quite hard. You know, the government is so good. I think that their legal department is an extension of politics. The way they fight their cases it's hard to grab hold of what they're actually saying. They're so slippery, to be honest. So going for the interpretation is a really nice way in, to just try and get them to say what their interpretation actually is, because that's another thing we found throughout this legal challenge. They haven't actually been clear of what that provision means. In fact, we asked them once, well, what do you mean by this provision? If you're saying it's not what we say, what do you mean? And they said they couldn't tell us because it was legally privileged. They're the government, like they should tell us what they think the law means. But this court case has enabled us to actually get some clarity on that. And also we're in no worse position, even if they had a negative interpretation. It's quite clearly not curbing anything. So we're in no worse position. But sadly, the judge has agreed with their interpretation. So essentially we're saying what we would all logically think it means. So if you're keeping an animal prone to detriment, they can't be kept in farming. Oh, God, I butchered that provision, I'm sorry. But they're saying we're doing it with the benchmark of a modern standard farming system. We need to do it to that benchmark because that's where the scientific evidence is. Whereas they're saying,
Sorry to pause you there, but we've got 2 minutes before the
oh
next
my God,
talk,
I'm so sorry. Just because it's complicated, but just very, very quickly, they're saying that, oh no, that isn't what it means. If there's a hypothetical situation where you could keep these animals, then that's okay. The problem with that is there's no scientific stuff. How could there be? You know, what is this hypothetical scenario? Are you stroking a chicken for 4? Sorry. Okay, so yeah, come to the legal.
What time is the legal talk tomorrow?
I actually don't know.
Okay. Well, go to the legal talk 2:10. Is that in this room?
Mate, you'll love it. No,
Beautiful. Okay. Sweet. Thank you all for coming.